So welcome everybody. I'm Mairead O'Reilly, the Educational Technologist in the College of Engineering and Architecture, for those that don't know me. And we're delighted today to be able to host this seminar under the umbrella of the Blended Learning Community of Practice, which ran all last year and will run again next year. So we're all aware that AI and ChatGPT have taken off this year at an alarming speed. And the decision to run the seminar early in the summer is to shed some light on how to make the best use of tools such as ChatGPT in advance of preparation for the autumn trimester. So I'd like to thank our guest today, Joe Houghton. Joe is an assistant professor and program director of the MSc in Project Management Programs at UCD Smurfit Graduate School of Business. And he's also the author of a recent book, Innovative Teaching with AI, Creative Approaches to Enhancing Learning and Education. We're going to be recording the session to share after. So if you have an issue with being involved, leave your videos off or come back to me and we can edit out any questions or sections you don't like. So with that, I'd like to welcome Joe.
Super. Thanks very much, Mairead and Jennifer. It's good to be here. I'm not sure where you found me, but you reached out, didn't you, a couple of months ago or whatever
Vincent
it was?
Hargaden was the...
It was Vincent, was it? Yes, he was I think, yes, and I've worked with Vincent over the years. It would be lovely if everybody turned their cameras on, because the idea of this seminar, as I have it in my head, is that this is a discussion this morning for us all. And it's going to be a bit miserable if we can't see anybody, because, the idea is this is going to be an interactive discussion. We're going to show you some stuff. You're going to go and do some stuff in breakout rooms. You're going to come back. We're going to talk about it and, explore what can be done. So this isn't a lecture and it's not set up as a lecture. So if you can engage, that would be much better. Otherwise, this I think might fall a little bit flat. So we'll see how we go. Thank you, Owen. That's great. Good to see at least one face there from the wall.
I presume you don't need to see me twice, Joe. So I'll leave my audio one off.
There we go, Jen. One is. So I mean, I suppose like everybody else. Presumably who's on the call, we're all aware of this ChatGPT phenomenon that has erupted since November 22nd last year when ChatGPT was kind of released. Lots of questions, obviously. What's it going to do to us as educators? How are our students going to use this stuff? Can we leverage these tools? Should we leverage these tools? What are these tools? What can they do? And that question is a fast-moving target because every week new tools are coming out. The additional tools that we know about are getting new features and new capabilities, and we're also learning more and more about what we can actually get these tools to do. It's such a new space that everybody is learning. There are no real experts in this space at the moment. There's just people who are a little bit further ahead of you, or me, and have played with things a bit more and stuff. So if you're anything like me as an educator, you've got fairly limited time. You've got lots of calls on that time. And you have to be fairly picky with what you use, both in terms of tools, both in terms of time looking at new stuff, because you've got teaching to prepare, you've got teaching to do, you've got research to do, you've got papers to publish, and all the rest of it. So, I mean, what I've set today up in my head to do is maybe just have a space where we could look at some of these questions. Now, I'm going to share my screen for a second, just to give you an idea of what I thought we might go through, but I'm completely up for changing this if other things are activating your interest, if we want to discuss other stuff. So I've just put together some notes in a document which I've got held in an app called Notion. So I don't know whether any of you have heard of Notion or not. If you haven't, I would encourage you all to sign up for it, because you can get a full license for Notion. We're using your UCD kind of educator account. And it's very good. It's becoming my second mind. It's where I put everything. It's where I now create all notes for all my courses and for my seminars and all that kind of stuff. And it connects to everything. So you can save stuff. I mean, I sit in bed in the morning, having my breakfast, reading my iPad, and I use a tool called Flipboard, which is a kind of news aggregator. And if I find an interesting article from Flipboard, I can just now save it straight into one of my Notion databases. And then, you know, when I come back into Notion, those articles are available to me and I can use them and stuff. So this is just a Notion doc that I put together with a plan for today. Okay, so here's what I've laid out. Let's see whether this is what we want to do or whether we want to do something differently. I thought we might kind of start with a demonstration of some AI tools. Okay, so obviously ChatGPT is the one everybody's heard of. So we'll maybe have a go with that. Yeah. I Ask AI is one that I came across last week actually, and it seems to give even better results than ChatGPT. So I'll show you that. Notion that I'm using now. Bing. The Bing chat is the quickest and easiest way to get free access to the ChatGPT 4 engine, which is probably the most powerful engine at the moment. But you have to be using Microsoft Edge. You can't kind of use Bing Chat on Chrome, as far as I know. But I actually, as a result of, you know, using all these tools now, I actually switched from Chrome to Edge, which I never thought would ever happen. And it's been painless, because all my plugins to Chrome just ported straight into Edge. And you know, the only little pain point for me is that it just asks me one extra question when you're doing a download, which isn't quite as easy as Chrome. But apart from that, it pulled in all my, you know, my links and my favorites and everything. So I mean, if nothing else, just install Edge so that you get access to Bing, because it really is quite easy. I mean, and there's Bing sitting in the top right-hand corner of my browser, and I can just open the Bing window. So I've got my browser here, and I've got Bing over here, and so I could have ChatGPT running in the left-hand side here, and use Bing on the right. And very often I'll do that and put the same prompt into both and see what comes out, and they'll come out differently. So that makes things very easy. Now, if you're going to use Bing, one little tip is, when you fire Bing up, you see at the bottom here these three options. You want to be in more creative, because that gives you access to ChatGPT 4. Okay, if you're in more balanced or more precise, you're just using kind of Bing and ChatGPT 3.5, which is the one that stops at 2021. But more creative gives you access to ChatGPT 4 and the web. Okay, so that's the one to be using. And this is a movable window, so you can make it bigger or smaller depending on what you want. Okay. Hugging Chat. You may not have heard of Hugging Chat. This is an open source AI. So this one is open source, and again, you just log into it and create a free account, and off you go. So that's pretty good. Poe is another one, and this gives you access to a number of different large language models. So these are the models behind something like ChatGPT or Bing or whatever. This is the data set that has, you know, been trained that these things run on. And there is another large language model called Claude. And Claude allows you to generate and put in more information than ChatGPT or Bing. So they're limited at the moment to, I think, 7,000 words or something like that. Claude is, you can drop in kind of like 100,000 words, I think it is. So for instance, I could drop in the text of my book into Claude and then just ask questions about it. Yeah, which is pretty magic. I mean, as a researcher, you know, so you can download a PDF of a book. You can say to Claude, right, read that book for me. Now I want to ask you questions about it, or summarize the main points from chapter 3, and it'll do it just like that. Okay, so Jennifer has got a big grin on her face. She's looking happy. So, I mean, one of the things that we'll probably get today is a few aha moments like that. And I mean, I'm not going to turn everybody into AI experts today, but what I'm just hoping is that by the end of the morning, you've got a bit more capability in terms of, oh, these things are possible. Yeah, there are tools out there that can do this stuff. And then you can go off and find out how to do it for you better and all the rest of it. But a lot of the time with AI at the moment, I think the problem is we just don't even know what we don't know. You know, it's that old thing, isn't it? You know, we're not even sure what the capabilities are, so we certainly can't leverage them. So, so that's
or we don't even have the time or the headspace to start. You know, that's kind of where I've been. Is that I just, well, partly I suppose because I knew that we had this workshop coming up, so I kind of compartmentalized it a little bit. But like I haven't even got to the point of downloading the thing. I'm a complete rookie here today, so maybe that's a good thing.
Well, that makes my job easier, Jennifer. If you don't, nothing, it's easy, isn't it? Yeah. Was it the
Yeah.
in the Kingdom of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king? Yeah. So yeah. So I'll just have one eye open to that. I mean, one resource that you might find useful is I'm doing a kind of weekly or bi-weekly at the moment newsletter on LinkedIn called Artificial Intelligence for Educators. So I will pop that in the chat. Let's see whether I can find the chat. There we are. So that should give you access to that newsletter. And I only started that newsletter about 5 weeks ago, and there's like 1,200 people are subscribed to it now. It's ridiculous. But it just shows the grow for people finding out about this stuff. And when I come across new tools, or when I come across, you know, an interesting article on AI that I think might be of interest to other educators, I just put it into there. So, you know, you're going to get something like, so this was number 19, okay, on LinkedIn. Here we are. Okay, so there's a few videos from different people. Oh, it's logging me in. There we are. So there's a Poe, okay, which is quite interesting, and Poe drives this thing called reframe.ai, which is quite interesting because it'll reframe negative situations for you. Mind mapping, presentations, and stuff like that. CleoVis is pretty interesting. So we might have a little play with that in a little while. Infinite scenarios. This is one that really got my attention, and why I put it in there. That this an Indian lady who's kind of put this together. But what it does is it uses AI to generate scenarios. So you set up your learning space, you set up your learning outcomes, and then the AI will take students through multiple different scenarios, and everyone's different, to support those learning outcomes and stuff. So rather than just creating, you know, a scenario where there's 3 possibilities or whatever, you've got kind of infinite possibilities. So pretty cool. And most of these services, the price point seems to be around $10 to $20 a month for most of these services. So, you know, none of them on their own are really that expensive if they're going to add value to your teaching and your pedagogy and whatever. Although, you know, they add up when you've subscribed to 1 or 2 pretty quickly. I was looking at my subscription bill the other day, and it's in well into 3 figures. Let's put it that way. My bib, there's a number of citation generation tools coming out now. and this is a pretty good one. I mean, he's a pain in the neck, the narrator on this. It's kind of an AI narrated thing and not done very well, but the tool seems to be quite good. So again, these are just tools that are out there that you may not know about that may give you some benefits. Okay. Jenny.ai is a pretty useful tool. So let me just click on that. I think I've got a Google login with this one. I normally use my Google login. Yeah, here we are. All right. So what Jenny does, I'll close the Bing window, is it kind of helps you write, and it also gives you access to other references, documents and stuff like that you might not otherwise surface. So it can be pretty cool as a tool as well. But we'll come back to these later on and play them. Plugins, ChatGPT. So I mean, let's just fire ChatGPT up, because that's probably the one everybody's heard of. Okay, and if you haven't played with ChatGPT yet, chatgpt.openai.com. So again, I'll pop the link in the chat for you. Okay, and I would suggest that you open a few of these tools up as I give you the links in your browsers, because you're going to go off and play with these in a minute. Okay, start by logging in or signing up. You can get a free account. You don't have to pay for this. So now, if you do just sign up, then if you're not paying the $20 a month, you don't get access to ChatGPT 4. You get access to ChatGPT 3.5, which is the slightly more limited version, but it's still very good. So if you've not played with anything, it's great. So I pay the $20 a month, and I've got access to ChatGPT 4, which is this one. This is the basic one. Okay, but I mean, let me just show you, if you haven't seen this and haven't played with this. Okay, create me a lesson plan for a 2-hour online seminar to my Masters in Project Management class. Yeah, the topic is risk in project management, and I want 2 breakout sessions, a discussion plenary at the end, and a 10-minute coffee break. Okay, let's just see what that gives us. Okay, can you type this fast? Okay, so let's so boom, boom, boom. All right. Okay, so what's it giving us here? Okay, lesson plan. So introduction. Okay, so welcome and introduction, importance of project management, agenda. Yeah, 20 minutes on understanding risk management. Breakout session 1. Yeah, divide participants into small groups. Give them a project scenario. Instruct them to identify potential risks. Yeah, guidance and support. Time for group discussion. Okay, so straight off, it's given you a workable 2-hour structure for a class. Now, do you want to cover all these things in this particular order? Do you want to cover these particular topics? No? Well, then change it. Okay. Yeah. So let's have a look. Leave out the risk response planning. Yeah. Let's focus more on strategic risks for organizations. Yeah. Rewrite the outline based on this. So now it redoes it for you. Okay. So you've got a whole lot of different things now. Okay. One of the key things about these chatbots is when you start a conversation, and it's a conversation that you're having with these AIs, okay, you want to treat the AI as a real person, as a personal assistant. So imagine you've got a grad student who is your personal assistant, yeah, and you are giving them a task. Okay, so talk to the AI as you would talk to that grad student. Give them that level of information. Give them the extra bits that you would discuss and throw in when you are asking the student to go off and do this piece of work or whatever it is. The more information you give the AI, the better the information that it will come back with. And while you're in this particular conversation, it remembers everything that's happened previously. Okay, so this has given you numbered points, hasn't it? Yeah, there we are. So right. So can you expand on point 5 above? Give me some scenarios and examples from real life. Okay, so this is assessing strategic risks. Okay. So now it reads back, finds point 5, which was strategic risks, and now it's starting to pull up different types of strategic risk and breaking them down. Yeah. Okay. And it's gone off and it's found some actual examples of these: Nokia, yeah, Volkswagen, United Airlines, Deepwater Horizon. Okay. So this becomes a to and fro now. So as a way of generating ideas, even just basic ChatGPT is really, really powerful at doing this stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's going to surface all the latest research and stuff like that, and certainly ChatGPT won't, because the basic 3.5 version, which is what I'm using at the moment, doesn't have access to anything after September 2021, and it's not brilliant at doing references. Okay, I mean, you can ask it for references, right? So give, let's see what it says. Give me academic references for the last set of scenarios. And you sometimes your spelling doesn't have to be brilliant either. Okay, now look at this. Okay, so then it's pulled the market risks, financial risks, and whatever, and it's given us a set of references. But you have to then go and check these, because sometimes they don't exist. Okay. So if we take that and we fire up, say, Scholar. Yeah, let's see. Okay, that one exists. Okay, so we're good there. Yeah. But we might need to come back and see. Now I must admit, ChatGPT was very flaky on references early. Maybe now it's getting a little better. Let's have a look. It does deposit in. All right, so that's an actual paper there. Yeah, so we've got.
Joe, sorry, this may be a very silly question, but if it's actually drumming up fake references and real references, is there a way to check that the content that they are using has actually come from the
No, there's no way with ChatGPT to link, if you like, the material that it gives you with the reference that it's using to cite that material. So one of the, and I think this is one of the current opportunities and challenges with AI, is if you're a domain knowledge expert, if you've got a knowledge of the domain, you read what the ChatGPT responses are, and you read them with a critical eye, just like you would read, the stuff that a student gave you in an assignment or whatever with a critical eye. And you say, yeah, that's right. I'm not sure about this. And you kind of hone in on that, and you check it a little harder. So you can't yet just believe what they say. Okay.
Yeah, because I was looking at a library one where they're checking the references.
Yeah.
There was a webinar, and that seems to be the biggest issue.
At the moment, it's one of the big issues, but there are tools that are coming out now that are aimed at giving you better citations and stuff. Now, Bing. Okay, so let's fire Bing up. Okay, and let's ask Bing the same kind of questions. Okay, so here's the risk management, wasn't it? So so let's go and ask the same questions. All right, so we want to start off with this this original question we asked. Now let's see what Bing gives us. Now you see it's a little bit slower because it's actually now going out onto the web as well. Okay, and it's referencing stuff.
Are you in the creative mode there, Joe, in Bing?
Yeah.
So
that's Jen.
This is me. So we're looking at ChatGPT 3.5 on the left and 4 on the right.
Yeah. This is access 4. Yes. Okay. So now look what it's doing, Mairead. You see on the right, we've got these little highlighted areas with a reference under them, and it's pointing you to a reference down at the bottom that you can then follow. Okay, so this is giving you slightly more linkage between the content that it's actually offering you and then the the external references that it's pulled that from. Okay, so here, ask learners to stay in their groups. Okay, so if I click on that, and now why is that taking us to Professional Academy? No idea. Ask learners to stay in their groups. Here, that's the one we should be on. Okay, there we are. 7 common. Right. So on the Asana website, there's a resources page around project risks, and that's where it's pulled this idea from. Okay, so they're all one. Now you see it hasn't kind of used an awful lot of stuff. Projectmanager.com, Coursera.com. Okay, so repeat this lesson plan, but using academic sources. Let's see whether that gives us different things. So again, you've got to start thinking about what you're asking for. If you're not reasonably precise in what you're asking for, then it'll just give you generic answers. The more precise you get, the more specific you get, then generally the better it will respond with stuff that you want. So let's see whether it gives us some stuff pulled out from okay, right, so now it's looking at the PMI, Project Management Institute. It's looking at HBR, Harvard Business Review. Okay, so it's pulling out stuff and linking it to these different things. Okay. So that's you can see how that's coming up. Okay, and if you highlight some of the on one of these areas, then it should fire. There we are. So managing project risk from the PMI, and there's an article. This was paper presented at the Global Congress and stuff like that. So that's reasonably credible, information from one of the leading project management kind of methodology bodies in the world. Right. Thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Joe, if you were to try and do something like this, but for a literature review.
Yeah.
So
Give me a question.
Okay, what's the state of the art of wind analysis on bridges?
See what it says. I have no idea about wind analysis on bridges, so this is going to be
okay. That's okay. So, like, is it, you see those pink buttons there where it went to PMI and HBR and Coursera?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so I seen the equivalent now. So it's gone to MDPI.
Yeah.
So it tells you where it's gone to. So you know then if it's going for the databases, basically. Yeah, the Science Direct and so on.
That's right.
Okay.
So, I mean,
now, obviously, maybe I should have said, give me a 10-sentence summary, or else it'll go on forever. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see, well, there were. It's giving you a couple of hundred words, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and then depending on what that says, you can just.
Yeah.
So it's put in.
You might say, okay, expand on reliability of wind tunnel tests and CFD.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Give me some specific examples.
So it's the pink boxes are telling us where it found the information.
Yeah.
But then if you wanted to know the actual citation, where do you hover?
You can
hover on the
hover over these, and it'll give you the
exact paper.
Click on the pink box here, and it's taking you there.
Oh, yeah.
So
there's my paper. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah, and I mean, so this is pulling out some more stuff. I mean, this is pretty good, isn't it?
So then, like, thinking about this a little bit more, presumably it is only finding information it can find online. So if
as opposed to information not online,
it's like that was published in the 80s, and so there isn't, it's a hard copy in a library. But what about or what about stuff that's behind a paywall? Like, suppose.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that's behind a paywall, it won't be able to get to, because
okay.
That you can now, that there are ways of stopping the chatbots getting past a paywall with the coding on a website. Some of the chatbots are better at getting around these than others, but
yeah,
I mean, it's
interesting because we have subscriptions through the UCD library to certain journals because we're staff here. Yeah. We're paying for them, so I suppose it's a limitation.
Yeah.
That's maybe relevant that we flag with our students, that it can only find open source information. Now it might find a back way into some other university's library.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know the trajectory is open anyway. UCD has a repository, so we can get the information that way.
There are some chatbots that are being created now that are aimed at academic research. Okay. And they have access to, the big databases because they've paid for access to the big databases.
Okay.
There's a guy who's writing a lot at the moment, a guy called Mushtaq Bilal. I've referenced him.
Oh, I've seen he's appeared in my Twitter. Yeah.
Now he's got his PhD and stuff, and he was a full-time academic making not a lot of money, and he's now switched into kind of becoming an AI guru, but purely on academic use of AI. Okay. If you're interested in academic research using AI, you want to be following Mushtaq Bilal. And if you
That's really interesting, because his tweets infuriate me, because they all have the standard. The first tweet is, want to know how you can do this, find out more for 10 steps for, and then you always have to click the next, you always have to expand the tweet.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you know, he generates 1 or 2 posts a day, and he's obviously spending hours and hours and hours researching these tools and giving you these tools and stuff. So as a way of staying up to date in the possibilities, he's
a good one to follow.
Connor Grennan is another one, and Julia Hardman. Again, I've referenced all these in the newsletter.
In the notes. In the newsletter. Okay. And then coming to that other one, then the older publications, the stuff that hasn't been digitized.
Yeah,
that's going to be another limitation then.
I guess that's another limitation, because I mean, if it's not been digitized, we can't get to it in any form. I mean, unless you go to the library, unless you
physically go there and make a foot.
But that's, I mean, how many people are doing that today?
It's just it's interesting.
Depending on the subject area.
When was the last time?
Depends on how current the information is. I mean, information is changing all the time. Technology is changing all the time. So the necessity to go back and look at historic stuff.
It's becoming less relevant.
You can't restrict students to that anyway.
I mean, essentially.
No, but it is a limitation that we should set out for students, just to highlight, okay, you might miss something important if this tool can't find, if the tool can't find everything, it could
be a challenge. It could be a challenge in a written thing that they have to come up with something from the library or from an archive
or whatever. Now, I mean, a lot of the archives are being digitized now, and they're being scanned. And I mean, even though they've not OCR'd them, you can get back to the original pages because they've been scanned. But yeah, I mean, there are still. But I mean, I can't remember the last time I went into a physical library and opened a book. Joe is grinning there. It's not just me then, Joe. Well,
that just brings me to one other question. I hope I'm not bringing us on a tangent too much, but suppose that you go into the physical library and you do a scan of a textbook that's in there that's not been digitized. Can the language models read scanned PDFs?
Well, I mean, all the scanning software now incorporates pretty good OCR, optical character. So if you've got a book open in front of you, you can now use your phone. Okay, you can take a picture of that page, and it will OCR that page for you and save it as a PDF. I mean, that's
because it's an interesting problem with the current screen readers that are available. So students who need a screen reader to that if the PDFs have been generated or if the documents have been generated and the screen reader can't read the PDF. So, but obviously this isn't a problem for some of the open AI stuff.
No, I mean, the OCR stuff has come on in leaps and bounds over the last few years. So, I mean, unless it's scrawled handwriting that's just absolutely illegible, most OCRs are going to make a pretty good job of most type these days.
Okay.
So you basically, you take the image, you run it through some kind of OCR, and most of the PDF scanners include this now.
We have census access. Is that one of these OCR things? We have access to that in UCD, I think.
I don't know. But I mean, you go onto the app store and look at almost any of the PDF scanners. I mean, whether you're paying the free ones or whether you're paying €2 or €3 to download one of the the super duper ones, and that they will allow you to take a picture of a page or multiple pages and then they'll just assemble that into a PDF that is actually been scanned, OCR'd. So then that's as if you typed it in. And then if you feed that PDF then into the large language model and say, read this PDF, it'll read it, and then you can ask questions about it and you can summarize it and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that stuff is very doable. So if it's been typed and you can get it OCR'd, then you can include that material now. Now, what about copyright? Well, I mean, copyright lasts for what, 70 years, does it? But there's a lot of stuff that's not been digitized that's not 70 years old. So I mean, you are looking at issues there. But if it's just for your own personal research use.
Well, this is just a very interesting point, because there's just a lot of stuff I'm reading at the minute that's published in the 60s.
Right.
And I've hard copies of some of it that I physically went to the library and photocopied.
Well, is get your phone out with your camera on and OCR that stuff. And like Siren's saying, the translate function.
Yeah, the translate function. Okay.
And
I suppose if ChatGPT or Bing or whatever, if the tool can't find the paper, I can always give it the paper.
You can give it the paper. Yeah, you can upload that from your computer. Yeah.
And do you give it the PDF, or do you highlight? I know I'm asking real for dummies questions here, but do you give it the PDF, or do you highlight the text and paste it in?
You can do either. You've got there is a limit to the amount of text that can be pasted into ChatGPT. It's about 7,000 words, I think. Okay. If you want more text, kind of like 30, 40,000 words, go to Poe. So one of the AI tools, you can see I'm building up a list of AI tools here, but there's one called Poe.
I saw it there. It was closer to the top. It's got a purple icon, I think.
I'm cool. Oh, there we are. Yeah. Okay, let's go and have a look at Poe. And one of the things Poe, I think it's Poe, gives you access to Claude LLM, which is one of the big large language models, which will allow you to upload hundreds of thousands of words, and then it will analyze it and do stuff.
Is that word limit then per chat, or is that?
That's the word limit for that, for the upload of kind of data, if you like, that you can ask it to read. You can then chat to your heart's content. So you see down on the left with Poe, different LLMs. So ChatGPT-4, you get a few questions for free, and then you've got to pay. But here we are, limited access to Claude Plus. Yeah, but Claude Instant. So there we are. If you go to Claude Instant, then this one you can access lots and lots of stuff. Okay. So now that one's 7,000 words. Claude Instant 100K. So this is a much bigger one. Okay. But again,
I suppose what I'm trying to figure out is, when you talk about the limit that you can ask it to read, is that in a session, or how do you, can you reset your back down to zero? Like, do you delete chats?
Started a new chat, then
a new chat. Okay.
It's a zero. Okay. Normally, that's the way it works. A chat is like a session. Yeah, and if you chat, it forgets everything it knew, and it's like you're just meeting again. You're on your first date. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Unless I guess you could give it if you got to the end of something in one chat and you felt like, okay, I could feed this in as my starting point for a new one, maybe. But
but it wouldn't remember all the
other stuff. Yeah.
And stuff that you'd had before. No, that's it. Now, one of the things that's coming, and I think it's coming to ChatGPT pretty quickly, is an ability to tell the bot certain stuff in the background. Yeah, that I'm a researcher in project management. My key areas of research interest are X and Y and Z. I use UK English, and I always want you to use, certain parameters and whatever. And you're going to be able to kind of set up this set of parameters so that it's aware of that stuff every time you have a conversation, and you don't have to kind of feed that in at the start. because I mean, when I'm generating prompts in any of these AIs, yeah, I mean, one of the things I normally put in the prompt is use UK English, yeah, because it bugs me to get, you know, the American spelling. You know, give me the answers in a conversational mode, or give me the answers in academic mode, you know, or whatever, and it then return stuff that sounds very different. Yeah.
And this idea of the chats, then, I know I'm maybe asking questions that are obvious to others, but perhaps there'll be people watching back on the recording that might be glad of it. Do the chats expire, or like if I'm having a conversation, it'll stay there and I can come back to it weeks later and ask it more questions?
I mean, if I go back to ChatGPT, here's ChatGPT, you can see, yeah, previous 30 days, yeah.
Your screen is still on Claude there, sorry. Oh no, it's caught up.
It's just a bit slow, but you can see there, I mean, we've been doing some research for my wife on kind of, you know, polyvagal theory and stuff like that. I was doing a session for the Irish Physio Association the other day, so we were having a look at physio and medical practice, and you can go back and back and back down that history.
Okay.
So and you know, you can go back to more. So at the bottom there's a kind of like, you know, older stuff. So it doesn't forget, which is really, really good. I was writing an article on UDL, and there we are. That's a few weeks ago now. But it'll go and retrieve that chat for me and bring it up. And you can also share links to the chat. Okay, and this is relatively new. So if I go back up to that one that we just did, so there's the risk management seminar questions that I'd put on. There we are. Okay, it's a little slow. Click. Come on, come back. Right, there we are. Risk management seminar. Okay, so that's all the stuff. Now share a link to this chat. So I can edit the name, so it'll automatically give the chat a name, but you can edit that name. But that little button here, yeah, there's the chat, yeah. I can copy that link. If I now pop that in the chat, you should be able to open that that discussion now and see all that stuff. So that's pretty good when you're collaborating as well, because it means you can share, you know, discussion, questions and answers and stuff. Just let me shut the door there. Kids open the door there. Yeah. So I don't know. Can you get through to that chat? You should be able to by just clicking.
I've clicked on it and it's opened it up, and there was a button saying continue that conversation. Right. And when I clicked on that, it's invited me into that chat so that I could put prompts in or ask questions.
And I mean, you know, the continue conversation button came in about 2 months ago, because there is a limit to how many words ChatGPT will give you in any one response. Okay, it's a few hundred words. But now that at the bottom, if partway through a response, it offers you the option continue. If you don't have that continue button in a chat bot, and it gives you a partial response, but you think there's more, you can just type in continue or give me more. Yeah. And it will then just carry on, if you like, and expand. So you just like you would in a conversation, you know, you're talking to somebody and they dry up, or their train of thought kind of derails or whatever. And you say, oh, tell me more about this, or oh, do continue. Yeah. And then off they go again. So it's very much like having a conversation. Yeah. So what do we think so far, Paul? What are your thoughts so far on this? Mr. Curran, you're muted. Yeah, the eternal cry, you're muted. Yeah, Paul can't unmute. Kira, can you unmute? Nope, Kira can't unmute either. Oh, we're not having
Oh, the host, it says the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves. I tried to do it here and I'm not sure what.
Oh, that's
nobody can unmute. I don't wonder how I'm talking, maybe because I'm a host.
Yeah. I don't know. Can we allow for that?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have put that in. So
as a setting.
unmute themselves is unticked.
Yeah, there's definitely some odd things
Yeah,
going.
you know, I just wondered, you know, the way you have two personas, are they both coming in from your UCD? Because there's something strange that you're only getting polls up on one. Is it on the other? And is there some conflict?
No, there's the same on both, and I've done this all week. It hasn't been a problem.
Try
Right, you said there.
Try unmuting yourself now, Paul or Kira. I've just enabled.
Yeah, there we go.
I've been able to unmute finally.
Somehow it was unchecked on security. Yeah, there we are.
Unmute themselves is unchecked on
Yeah, I enabled it now, so people should be able to unmute. Paul, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, one of my things would be when you were talking about historic material. So for me in my particular area, the principal historic material would be mathematical.
Right.
So that obviously doesn't go out of date because that's not the nature of mathematics. The nature of mathematics is it's very much builds upon its foundations. It doesn't have these fads as other areas have of suddenly deciding that everything in the past was just wrong and we're just going to go a different way. Now in mathematics, a lot is not digitized. So there is a big digitizing program to digitize the complete works of some very important mathematicians such as Euler and Cauchy and Cayley, who are the most prolific mathematicians of all time. But you haven't shown examples of how does the OCR work with regards to symbols that are not standard alphabets. That's something that I'd be interested in seeing. Some time back, the American Mathematical Society ran a very big program, and for decades actually. And one of the UCD people actually contributed to that program, where basically they produced the pixel maps for every single symbol that had ever appeared in any paper in mathematics.
Wow.
And many of those symbols they're from other alphabets. There's Cyrillic, Hebrew, there's Frankish. There's a lot of those. So I wonder, would OCR work well with that? Because that would be the kind of, I would be wanting students to give me citations of the actual relevant original work, which might be from 1600.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not internet age.
But somebody's probably, I mean, it's quite possibly been at least scanned as an image, even if it's not been OCR'd. And, there might be a commentary around it that allows people to get back to that original image of the scanned text or whatever.
I was just interested, do you know the algorithms, or have they revealed, it was notable that in the first responses, it tended to be that the sources, first and foremost, were quite generic receptacles, but they were also very new.
Yes.
It seemed to be kind of going, everything is important is in the last year or two.
Yeah.
Which is completely false in my area. So is that the case? Is there a weighting towards new? And you have to drill in and force it to give more detail in order to push it back to not new, but actually original.
That's an interesting thought. I would say yes. I would say at the moment, a lot of the bots seem to be focusing you more on the more recent stuff, because I think that's probably what a lot of people are looking for when they're using these bots, is kind of give me the up-to-date information. Now, in your particular field, that may not be true. So in which case you would have to be more precise in your requests, if you like. But the generic requests seem to be, now the ChatGPT doesn't give us its algorithm. You know, we don't know what the criteria are and what the rules are for returning stuff. And from what I'm reading, and I mean, I'm by no means, you know, an expert in the under the covers stuff that goes on in all the LLMs, but I mean, it's hugely complex, the number of factors that are being involved in, you know, the LLMs making these decisions and surfacing information and then collating information and stuff. So we haven't got eyes on that stuff because OpenAI is a commercial institution as well. It's keeping that stuff under wraps.
It's also possibly the case that they don't know it themselves. That's not the nature. I mean, it's not an algorithm in the traditional sense of the word.
No,
it's a machine learned reaction. Yeah. And the problem with machine learned reactions is they become black boxes.
Indeed.
Some kind of the Delphic oracle.
Yeah.
You ask and you get a response. You don't know why you get that response. And even the people who made it don't know why you get that.
And I suspect that's where we're at. And it's interesting that, I mean, you know, there's a plethora of new AIs coming out. You know, so whether you use ChatGPT, whether you use Bing, whether you use Bard, whether you use Claude, yeah, they'll all give you different answers. And what we're going to find is that people will end up gravitating to ones where the answers that they get are the ones that they either like or that they feel comfortable with or whatever. There's dangers there as well, aren't there? Because, you know, but I mean, we all use Google search because that's it, isn't it? You know, that's kind of the one that we use. But maybe if we go to DuckDuckGo or we go to, you know, one of the, you know, the other search engines, we get a different set of answers. So we're all always limited to some extent by the
difference. If you use Google search, and you ask about, you know, Newton's laws, and if the citation is Donald Trump, then you know to weight that to 0.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if these, I know there have been circumstances where there's sort of been, AIs have effectively been utilized as a kind of a racism ex machina, that they've basically been used to go, for example, by immigration in the US, they were stopping people coming over because the AI was telling them.
Yeah.
And what it really was doing was saying, oh, it's not me. It's not because you look like you might have been Muslim at one point. It's just the machine thinks. So it's literally you know, outsourcing racism to the machine.
Yeah, I mean, the ethical discussions around this are absolutely fascinating. UNESCO is doing some really good stuff around that at the moment. They published a paper last week on this, which is, you know, setting up kind of more of that discussion. Yeah, it's not something I've got an answer for. So yeah, there we lost Kira. I think she had to run off to another meeting. Anybody else got any thoughts? Because otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We're not running 3 hours without a break. So I've got a sick wife upstairs recovering from a big op last week, so I'm going to go and make her a tea and stuff. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll send you all out to go and have a little explore yourself when we get back. All right. Okay. So we'll resume in 10 minutes.
Thanks.
Although I won't be able to stay for the entire session. Apologies. I'll have to go at about 10 to 12. But I'm very grateful for this. It's very interesting.
Paul, on that note, if you are going and if you were curtailed by that Zoom thing, is there anything you actually want to ask Joe before we break out into rooms?
No, I don't think so. I think this is very interesting. I'm just wondering, Joe, have you had any dealings with Paul Cuff? He's in my school, and he's doing he has a project now that he's doing, which is looking at the effect of ChatGPT and how we need to be engaged with it prior to the upcoming trimester in terms of, dealing with issues of cheating and so on. So I think he'd love to talk to you, and whether you'd like to talk to him, I don't know.
He was actually on the first part of the session. He had to go early, and I have met him. We did have the discussion to see if it would make sense for him to collaborate with Joe on this, but Paul's research is much earlier and he's focusing in different directions. So we have Joe coming back in September for Q&A, and the idea is to bring Paul in possibly then, and then take up sessions with Paul. Possibly.
He gave us one talk earlier, which was quite interesting, just in the school. And one of the things he asked, this is that he was asking other questions. I think it was again of ChatGPT. I missed the very start of the talk, so I'm not quite sure which one he was using. But he asked it to come up with a particular type of circuit, which was a phase lock loop,
right?
To mix it with Valentine's Day. So it ended up basically getting this chip, a picture of a chip, which was a PLL on a chip, which was an analog devices, a PLL on a chip, and it had ended up being superimposed on a heart. It was just mad. It was very cool.
Yeah, and he actually did a similar one with me with an op-amp, and asked it to something like do something with a cowboy hat, or give us a some Wild West of an op-amp circuit. And it was actually unbelievable. My background is electronics as well, and I came out of that little session knowing more about op-amps than I had when I'd been in college.
Wow.
A clearer explanation than I'd had in analog electronics.
That was actually one thought
which was mad, was so all of engineering is going to be going through in the start of next year. We're going to be going through accreditation. So we actually just did a thing where we asked ChatGPT to just take a shot at writing our accreditation documents.
Yeah,
and we're basically kind of going, probably actually use these. I mean, it's certainly a very good place to start.
I mean, I think that's, if nothing else, you should never ever start any piece of work with a blank page anymore. Almost, I mean, there may be times when actually you do want people to start with a blank page and you want them to generate things from the ground up. But, for most people these days, this is going to be the way to do it. What's the question I've got? Right, let's throw it into ChatGPT or whatever I'm using at the time. And I mean, don't forget, by Christmas, this is going to be built into Microsoft Word. Okay. So, I mean, there's no hiding from this anymore. This is coming. It's already in Google Docs, in beta. And it will be in, all the major tools that all our students are using. So we've got to change our way of teaching to embrace this rather than to say, you can't use this, this is cheating. I mean, that's always just been crazy, kind of ridiculous. I'm glad that came up, because I want to just share with you, I started this year. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, my mic's working again. That's fine. I had one quick question, just building on what Mairead said there about what she learned in that session. Do you have any suggested prompts maybe for like layperson summaries of things? Like if we're encouraging our students to use this in the right way, but you want the tool to give you not just a hodgepodge of words that it scraped from here, there, and yonder, but actually a decent layperson definition of something or explanation of something.
Yeah. What you generally do when you set up, one of the chat prompts, okay, to do something like that is you need to kind of tell it who it is, who you are, and what you want. Okay. So you are an expert in Yeah. You are an expert in. Now, can I do this? No. Okay. So electronic engineering. Full stop. Give me a synopsis of the principles of printed circuit boards that would be suitable for a first year undergrad student with no prior knowledge in this area.
Okay, so obviously it's all about the prompting, but
all about the prompting. So it's what, you know, so you're telling it there. I've just told it, okay, you know, you're an expert. Yeah, I'm an undergrad student with no understanding of this. What are the things now? Did it? It seems to be my ChatGPT seems to have a lag. There we are. Let's see whether we can just. See, everything seems to be running very slow on ChatGPT. Let's regenerate that response. What I did there was actually I enabled dictation on my machine as well. So I'm on a Mac and I've got dictation. So if I press the function button twice, it just puts me into dictate. And it's rather lovely because you can just dictate your questions into ChatGPT or whatever, you know, then it will go off and it will do its thing, and it's having a think at the moment. So
I derailed you there. You've answered my question.
Right. Okay.
So don't feel like you have to wait for ChatGPT to come back on board.
We won't wait for that. Let me just flick over to here. So, I mean, this comes back to something Paul said earlier on. So, I mean, you know, how do we queue up our students for all this stuff, and how do we queue ourselves up for this stuff? Okay, so there is a professor out in Wharton in the US called Ethan Mollick. And again, he's become quite a well-known name in the AI field because he was one of the first people out of the blocks to engage openly with AI with his students, and he created a kind of student policy that he shared with all his students for AI. Okay, so that's what I now have got in all my course outlines. So this is Canva, and I've generated my course outline, and nothing is moving. What is happening on my machine? Let's have a look. Nothing. Gone very, very slow for me. Let's have a look. It's not like I've got a huge amount open. No, that's not. Canva is not responding. Let me just try opening it again and seeing whether we can get it up. Canva. Do any of you, while I'm doing this, do any of you yet include AI in any of your classes or in any of your courses? Do you encourage your students to use it? Have you? I mean, this semester, have you done any grading yet? Have you seen students' kind of submissions, and are they using AI to generate stuff, or are they all writing everything themselves? Because if you think they are writing everything themselves, you're wrong. Joe, you've got a big grin on your face. Have you seen any of this stuff yet? You should be able to unmute now, I hope.
Yeah, I actually don't teach. I'm the senior IT specialist here in engineering and architecture. So, but I've had conversations with some heads of schools with regards to that they're not sort of oblivious that AI is there. And some of the, I think it's architecture, Paul was saying that he even sort of embraces it for theses, in the thesis, and puts it in the bibliography if you've looked at AI. As far as I know, I don't know if he's actually started doing it yet, but he's definitely looking into it.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
I was going to say, I had a conversation with a student, and I know that they are using AI, but he was even telling me that he was using a second version or a second program that would take the content and change the language so that it wasn't so computer generated and it looked more like it was coming from a person. So he was putting it through 2 or 3 different filters, essentially.
Yes.
And trying to make it untrackable. Yeah.
And I mean, it is essentially untrackable at the moment. I mean, there are a couple of tools out there, but they're very low accuracy in being able to detect that stuff has been written by AI. And if you go in and you change a few words, it's completely untrackable. So this stuff is, I mean, the students are using this. There's no question about it. So what I've done is I've built into my module outlines a page on AI where I say you can use it. Yeah. But if you use it, declare you're using it. Okay. And cite it appropriately. So let me just scroll down here. I think it's page 15. I remember correctly. I've got fiber to the house. I've got like 1 gigabit broadband. I have no idea why this is so slow, but anyway, for some reason it is a little slow this morning. Let's go through. There we are. AI. Right. So let me bring this page up a bit. Okay. So this is my my course outline for one of the courses, and let's just have a look and see what. Right. So AI is here to stay. I encourage you to explore and utilize them, just as you will explore and utilize any other tools available to help access and structure your thinking. Okay, they can be an excellent way to surface materials. The ethical principles for original work have not changed, nor have the rules around plagiarism. Okay, so kind of that's up front. Okay, and then just flagging up some stuff. Okay, so the more effort you put into asking them really good questions, the better the responses will be. Don't blindly assume responses are correct. And then if you do utilize AI, you must include a section in your introduction or early submission explaining what you used it for and the prompts you used to surface your results. Okay. Now, if they're going to use it anyway, at least this puts us in a place where, we are, if you like, partnering with them on their journey rather than, just trying to be obstructive and say, you can't use this stuff, it's not right, and all the rest of it. Because to me, that is just crazy. I mean, this stable door is well and truly open. In fact, it's been blown off its hinges. Okay, the horse will never be put back in the stable, and it's going to be incorporated in everything that the students use in terms of tools. It's in Canva now. It's going to be in Office very soon. It's in Google Docs. It's in so many different tools. So as educators, if we don't recognize that these tools are out there already and adjust our approaches accordingly, I think it's impossible to expect students not to use this stuff. And really, as a 21st century university trying to prepare our students for life in commerce and industry and research and whatever, should we be telling them not to use this stuff? I mean, certainly in the business school. Now, it may be different in engineering, and shoot me down if so. But in the business school, we're trying to create people who are ready to go out and do business. And that means leveraging all the tools that you've got available to you to surface information and collate it and synthesize it and put it in front of clients and create proposals and all that kind of stuff. So I'm encouraging my students to do this. I mean, I'm running seminars now with them, and I'll throw them into a breakout room and I'll say, right, whatever your preferred agent is, go off and interrogate it and come back with a plan to present to your client. You've got 20 minutes. And then we discuss what comes back. Yeah. And we have a look and we see what was returned from these different AIs and things. And we say, well, that's good. That's not so good. This is flat out wrong. Yeah, these references are wrong, that kind of stuff, and that's producing some very, very interesting classes. And so I'm doing this already, and it's now built into my courses, and it will be used more going forward. So I don't know whether anybody else is doing anything like that. Mauro, are you able to unmute, or Victoria? We haven't heard from you guys yet. Any thoughts on this? And if not, Owen or Paul or Joe? No, the other two.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I haven't included anything yet, but I was kind of sitting on the fence to see how things go. But I do think that when you're educating professionals, that there can be a benefit to giving them all the tools that they will use in the professional career. And the question then always becomes, do you assess them using those tools or not? I think that's, I suppose, one of the things that is changing all the time about the assessment, and where it comes into the assessment, and how do you ensure that the assessment is fair and accurate and accurately reflecting the students' knowledge and ability with the subject material, as opposed to their ability to use AI.
Yeah, and I mean that comes down to your learning outcomes, really, doesn't it? I mean, do you want the learning outcome to be that the student knows facts in their head, if you like, and that's an exam situation, isn't it, where they have to be able to do stuff without access to the computers or whatever, or do you want them to be able to perhaps process a situation in an appropriate manner using whatever tools they've got? Now I'm moving more to that rather than rote learning of knowing knowledge and facts, because how often do you actually need that when you've always got access to search engines and ChatGPT and stuff like that? Or how much should we be training them to analyze situations and process information so that they can come to a better outcome in a situation? And I mean, and I know that's a provocative statement, because it goes to a lot of the assessment stuff that currently we do, and should we still be doing it, or should we be changing our assessments now that the game has changed somewhat again? Now we've got a different access to information.
I think this is actually the focus more of Paul Cuff's research in under that SATL project. And I think, well, my own thinking just there is that the difficulty could be with maybe the likes of first years that still have to have learn core information by whatever means before they have the ability to go out and ask intelligent questions, and use the information. So it's different dealing with, a third year or a fourth year as opposed to a first year.
Yeah, they've got to learn the tables first before you. Yeah.
Pardon?
Victoria's come online. Can you speak to us now, Victoria? That's lovely.
Hello. Hi. Thank you. I've been listening in the background, and very interesting. Thank you for holding this. I'm teaching in design, and I've done a little experimenting to see, what would chat come up with. I know there's plugins for drawing, and I was basically getting, maybe C or D grade sophomore level design work. And I'm sure that could be improved. I don't know how they managed to generate those sort of images, but maybe you could talk a little bit about not just written material, but drawing and those sort of tools.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different strand of AI at the moment, this whole generative AI that's coming out. So we've got DALL-E, we've got Midjourney, and tools like that. I mean, even Bing and Canva have got basic kind of image generation now. Every month it's improving. I don't know when you did your last look at this, Victoria, but if you go to Midjourney now, Midjourney 5.2 last week, I think, and that's kind of like a quantum leap forward in the quality that is now being put out. Now, in terms of design, I mean, design is a very specific area. It's not art, is it? It's design. I mean, form and function to do something effectively and beautifully, and all the rest of it. I mean, my wife used to be a graphic designer, so I mean, I've absorbed a little bit from listening to her over the years and stuff. Yeah, I think the generative stuff at the moment is more aimed at art rather than design.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of stuff come through yet specifically aimed at design. It's more creating photorealistic images or fantasy surreal type images, and they look wonderful, and they're becoming increasingly detailed, even though they still can't get fingers right. But designing a new stool or a new pen or whatever. Adobe's doing some work in this area with 3D modeling and stuff like that, and Firefly is Adobe's AI there.
I was pretty impressed. I asked it to design an urban plaza with a kind of eco style planting and people in it, and and it actually gave kind of renderings of that in just a few minutes. And I didn't go so far as to look at, well, what would be the plan sections, elevations, how would you, say schedule that out or something. But, it wasn't great, but it certainly was quick.
Yeah, it would. And I mean, that would have been something that would have taken half a day or a day to kind of generate,
more because it was a rendering. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, is that what you're talking about there is joining up a whole load of different things, isn't it? I mean, you've got an artistic vision of how a plaza may look, and then you're moving from that to very, very specific concrete stuff like, give me elevations, give me detailed drawings, give me weight and load bearing and stress and all that kind of stuff. And then you're moving from that to right now project manage clearing the site and building this stuff and quantity survey it, and so the materials and stuff. Now at the moment I'm not seeing that joined up set of different disciplines coming together.
I would say it could easily be done because BIM is like that. It's basically been generated by people in terms of the direction they want to go in, but it generates its own cascade of information as you go. And I think I have seen AI where somebody had done a plan and then they were saying, oh no, this room bigger, that room smaller, or just all kinds of putting in parameters. So it's parametric design combined with BIM, really.
Yeah, now when you think the two together, then you've got something very powerful from a design.
And I did see demonstrations of it, which were pretty impressive. Young people using it to alter plans.
Yeah, and I mean, the BIM software has accelerated just like everything else in the last few years. So but I mean, I haven't gone down that route yet. I mean, one of my other hats is that I'm one of the AI advisors to the Royal Photographic Society, and we're actually doing a seminar for them. We're having a 2-day conference in October, and we've got a digital imaging group seminar coming up later on in the month, and we will be looking at kind of the kind of advances in imaging AI there. So if you're interested, Victoria, drop me a line and I'll send you a link to it. That's an open invitation if anybody wants that. But I mean, it's really interesting because I mean, I suppose I've come at AI from kind of the stuff that I'm interested in mostly, which is kind of projects and project management and writing and stuff. Paul's coming at this from a totally different angle to me, with the kind of like the mathematics and the equations and stuff. And I must admit, I've never gone down that road at all. I've no idea about that stuff. And like Victoria, you're in design and stuff. So it's interesting to open the box, but I don't have all the answers by any means. to any of this stuff. It's yeah, it's a scary one, really, isn't it? But I do think as educators that we need to face up to AI being here now, because it is, and we need to positively guide our students through our expectations of how they're going to use AI or not, and when's appropriate to use it, and when we want them to acquire foundational knowledge through other means. Because there is definitely a kind of a worry that it just becomes a crutch. The first thing that everybody does is ask the AI and blindly accept the answer. But if you don't have a domain knowledge to process that answer and critically analyze it and say, is this good? Is this bad? Is this wrong? Then, you know, you could be told anything and you just accept it. Fake news is, you know, is scary stuff. I don't know where we are with that. So I mean, I suspect that the seminar with Paul is going to be quite interesting, because I'm sure he will have gone into this in a bit more detail. What do you think, Mairead? Does he? You've spoken to him more than I haven't met the guy yet, so.
He has researchers at the moment. The project only began around the end of April, May, and it will run until December, 12 months. So he has particular phases, and they have 2 researchers employed throughout the summer to literally investigate how people are assessing currently. So it's still very early days, but he expects to have findings by early September. And it would be really interesting to put the 2 of you together, if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, as I say, I'm up for that. You know, when we get into September after the August break, will be lovely.
Yeah, and also, well, under this whole, you know, this community of practice makes it possible to have this space to you know, an audience or whatever. So I hope to get him in and to share his findings and maybe do seminars or whatever. So ideally, when you're doing your return in September, we might look at what's feasible at that point between the 2 of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe kind of co-run a discussion or a seminar or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, I think, well, as I was saying to him when I met him, is that I really think we just have to embrace it, and the more heads that are involved, the better.
Yeah.
There's no point in being solo researchers or whatever, or people battling on their own.
I mean, what's the feeling in the room on my kind of little AI policy there that I've put in my student kind of module outline? Do you like it? Do you is it horrifying? What are your thoughts on that as educators in different fields? Because that's of interest to me, certainly. Paul.
I mean, you're preaching to the converted with me. I've taken the view. I haven't had. I've been lecturing for a very long time, but I haven't actually had a sit-down closed book examination in about 30 years. All of the examinations that I did have in the past, they were all what I would have called open source. So you were in a computer room and you had access to everything except another live human brain, because I completely agree with you. Now, I haven't had the first year and the second year, but in our 3rd and 4th and 5th year, my view is we're preparing them for industry.
Yes.
And so you prepare them to solve the problem with the tools that they will have in industry to solve the problem. And just as I never objected to them using, you know, a calculator, and I didn't object to them using the internet, and I didn't object to them using MATLAB and various other things, I don't object to them using AI tools. The concern in my area is always that the difference in my area between error is huge. And the last time there was an error in my area was made by Boeing with their 737 MAX. And the result of that error was that to some extent it was a machine learned solution to a problem. And the machine didn't to use a correct model. And of course, in science and engineering, we have correct models. There is one answer.
Yes.
And so it had been declared at an early stage that this craft was stable, and it wasn't.
Right.
So the consequence of that was not that someone who was worth 13 billion on Monday was worth 12 billion on Tuesday. The consequence of that was that 240 people who were alive on Monday were not alive on Tuesday. It's really serious consequences, and that's the reality of engineering. That many engineering systems are safety critical systems, and human lives at any given moment, there's probably at least 200,000 human lives dependent upon the answers being correct.
Yeah.
And that's so when I want my students to use AI, I really want them to kind of go, the AI can flesh out lots of stuff, but you have to really check the mathematics. You have to check the simulations. You have to check the models. You have to make sure that if the thing says this is safe, because that's the problem, you might be aware in engineering, once a safety cert is issued, it's never revisited.
Oh, right.
People down the line will go, this was signed off, end of. It's never revisited.
Right.
And so, and that's the problem. So you really have to get that right. That would be my concern with AI at the moment, is you say, everyone's saying, it just makes stuff up. Literally just makes stuff up.
And at the moment, we
It'd be
can't.
very hard if it's just tables of numbers.
How
If it just literally makes it up, then you actually don't know what the answer, what the engineering answer is. Is this system safe? Can people be allowed to use it? Can they put their lives in the hands of the system?
Yeah.
But I absolutely agree. Same as Grammarly or anything. You know, we don't use quills anymore. And you're in my opinion, you're absolutely right. We would be doing a huge disservice to our students to not prepare them for the world that they're going into. And it is a world of AI in industry. End of story, as far as I'm concerned.
Now, Victoria may say, well, we should use quills, because the quills are a beautiful way of writing and representing. And Steve Jobs famously went off and learned calligraphy. And that's where, you know, a lot of the beautiful fonts that Apple used came from and stuff like that. But it's in a space alongside all the other stuff, I guess, Victoria, isn't it, that you do that stuff?
That's right. In fact, it could be the case that, you know, it frees us up a bit more for doing, you know, kind of more original work. But it does have to be checked, and people have to be taught really how to judge whether something's good or not. And for our profession, which is basically a visual language, you know, it's about balance, proportion, you know, appropriate combination of form and function, you know, those have to be really balanced. It's difficult to judge, you know, and so many people get it wrong. As you know, there's so many bad buildings out there, you know, and so it's just going to be a very interesting, I think we have to use it. It's a tool, you know, a powerful tool. We have to be able to use it. So I do agree with your thoughts there.
Yeah, but I think, and I mean, this is based on the feedback I've had from the students this term. Okay. They loved the idea. I was the only professor this term that any of the students that I had this, you know, that I'd included this in my classes, all of the students said I was the only professor who'd openly discussed this with them. And that they really liked that. They were, you know, because they all knew about it. Now, I did a poll, and I was going to do the same poll with you, but we couldn't turn polling on for the session today. But I did a poll, and I asked them 1 to 10, where 1 is I know nothing about ChatGPT and AI. I've never, you know, it's completely new to me. 10 is I'm using it every day. I'm a relative expert in it. And I asked each class, where are you at the start of the term with AI? And it was really quite interesting. About 20% of them put themselves at kind of 8 and above. there were 40% roughly 3 and below, and then the rest were in the middle. Yeah, so there were a lot of students who knew nothing about this, and it was complete. It was like jaw dropping. It was like Harry Potter moment, you know, when I showed them ChatGPT and they saw what it could do. And the initial class discussions have been across that spectrum. So some of the students just rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, this is old," you know, kind of, we've been using this for months and months and we use it every day. But to other students, it was brand new. And there was quite a difference between the full-time students and the part-time students as well. The part-time students' initial reaction was, "Isn't this cheating?" Which I thought was really, really funny. You know? So these are people in work, doing a master's part-time or whatever. And that was the almost universal first reaction from them was, "Isn't this cheating?" So we had to have a discussion about the fact that it's a tool like anything else. And, you know, is using Google search cheating? Is using a calculator cheating? You know, it's just kind of like a different level of tool to surface information. And then about, you know, right, well, at what point does it become cheating? You know, if you submit a page of writing that's straight from ChatGPT and you've not checked it and you've not adjusted it with your own thoughts and stuff, maybe now we're straying into, you know, plagiarism, or this isn't stuff that you should be submitting as your own work. Certainly not if you're not declaring that this has come straight out of a chatbot. But then a student pipes up and says, "Yeah, but if that page is a result of me spending half an hour with that chatbot with a series of increasingly focused prompts that get me to that page, yeah, what's the difference between me having actually physically written that page out by hand and ChatGPT having generated that page as a result of, you know, 5 or 10 prompts that I've given it?" And that's an interesting discussion to have, isn't it? You know, the fact that the words on the page or the drawing or whatever, you know, is created. Well, what's the mode of creation? And again, these tools are giving us new modes of creation. You know, my daughter April, she's sitting in the next room watching TV at the moment, but I mean, she's just discovered digital art. So she does a lot of painting and drawing, and she took a placing in the Texaco art competition last year. So, you know, so she's got a good talent, but she's now found, you know, Procreate on the iPad. And I've not been able to get her off it for the last few days, and it's wonderful. She's coming up with some amazing stuff, but some of the stuff that she's coming up with is you know, the Bezier curves and things. It does.
We lost Joe.
Somebody's using too much bandwidth in the house.
Yeah. Just what he told us about his daughter. Does he really know? I presume he'll come back in.
I remember just at the end of last term, we were having a staff meeting over in architecture, and you know, the topic came up about ChatGPT and all of that, and there was real fear in the room, you know, that it was going to be there was going to be plagiarism and cheating and all kinds of issues, and that's changed in only just a few months, where people are, you know, have done a little experimenting and are trying to figure out how to use it themselves and getting their heads around it. I mean, I feel like I need to get to know it by the end of the summer, because as soon as, you know, this autumn term starts up, I have the students coming in and I'll have to judge what they're doing and maybe generate different ways of doing the exercises, you know, that we've been doing before, with utilizing, you know, really utilizing it. And I haven't structured any of that stuff into my classes yet. Has anyone else?
No, not yet.
I would imagine the biggest challenge that will dictate the road forward will be in how it's introduced to first years and how they settle with using it, because they're coming in with such little knowledge of the subject areas and also not necessarily strong principles about plagiarism or real understanding of any of that. And that terrible fear, you know, of trying to get through or trying to get the highest mark or whatever, and not really having the ethical approach, or not necessarily understanding that, particularly in engineering, it's knowing how to use the information is far more important than regurgitating the information. So it's getting them off on a good route to utilizing these tools to the best advantage. I would imagine be the hardest challenge.
I'm just thinking from personal experience of teaching students, like we teach students in second year how to use Excel to do lots of calculations. And we, like in my exams, I'm encouraging the students to use Excel during the online exams. And still less than half of them will do it. They still will go back to a pen and paper to write out their numerical solution, which means that they are at a disadvantage, even though it's been explained to them that they are at a disadvantage under an assessment situation. Even though they've been shown how to use the tool, they're told that they can use it, some of them still won't. So then it becomes a little bit of inequality, and you're kind of wondering, is it fair that some students are using a new tool and some aren't, and that your method of assessment, like my marks have gone way down since COVID, because I'm marking for students that should be using Excel, but some of them are deciding not to use it, and therefore, you know, they're getting C's because they don't have enough time to complete the exam, when if they were using Excel, they'd probably be getting a B or an A, because they'd be able to do the calculations much quicker.
Do you think they might have had a different approach if they were told they couldn't use Excel and actually were sneaking in to do it? You know, is it the forbidden?
I think there are always ones that will adapt to it and realize that this is an advantage. But I think I almost say I have to tell them all, you must use Excel, or you must use this tool to make it equitable. When you leave it open to the option of using it or not, there are some that will adapt and will learn the new tool and will flourish. And there are others that will think that'll take too much time. I'll just stick with the way I'm used to sticking to do it. And, you know, I think we all experience it from time to time that, you know, there's something new that we have to learn like this, and we know we have to learn it, but we have to invest the time and effort to learn it. And once we've got a competency in it, we realize that it's saving us time, but it's the commitment to invest time to learn the new tool.
Again, that kind of brings me back to first year. And getting things in from the beginning when the big change is going on. The other thing that with all blended and online learning stuff in particular is the emphasis on scaffolding for students, you know, constantly not assuming that they can latch on to something because they've been shown, but having constant building blocks and places where they can go back to that's a safe place. So maybe very early on that there's an assessment that's for no marks, but that is done where they have to just use Excel and get it out of the way, you know, and then tutorials afterwards if Excel is causing an issue. You get to seeing, you know, when there's nothing at stake, where the blocks are.
And those all exist along the way, and they have to use it for reports along the way and stuff like that, but still, because it's not, and that's only the one example I have in the exam situation, because it's not used in other exams situations, they still revert back to paper and pen.
My computer died on me. It looks like my power cable is glitchy or something, so I've just plugged another power cable in, but my Mac will take a minute or two to come back up, so apologies for me dropping out if you can hear me. I'm on my phone now. So if, assuming my computer comes back up, I can rejoin you on the main room, but it's something is not happy with it at the moment, so apologies there. So yes, I've lost all my other tabs and things because, as I say, I'm just on the phone now with all of you. I'm not sure whether there's more that I've got to show you today. I think we've kind of explored the initial stuff, and you've all quite clearly gone off and had a play with some of the tools previously. So I don't know whether just going out into breakout rooms to do that and then come back and discuss it is going to add any value. Is there anything else that anybody has got, you know, as a discussion point that it would be worth us exploring? And, you know, if there are any other things you want me to show you, I'm happy to do that, assuming my computer does spring back to life in a moment or two.
Joe, the question that's coming at me quite a bit is, and the emphasis seems to be on assessment.
Yeah.
And how are we going to change assessment to factor in, you know, I mean, it's a huge question, but it is the one that people are jumping to. If there's any light that you can throw, that
it's clear that the old mode of assessment, where the assessment was, tell me what you know about. Okay, you know, write an essay on this, 5,000 words on, you know, Marie Antoinette and the French Revolution or whatever. That kind of mode of assessment is effectively dead. Okay, we can't just ask students for that stuff now, unless we want to do closed book written exams. Because if people are on electronic devices, unless we're, you know, using hypervigilant proctoring systems and stuff like that, they can just generate that stuff now using these tools very, very quickly and very, very easily. So if we want to assess students on known knowledge in their heads, then we have to go back to exams in, you know, physical exam halls where they're writing on paper and all the rest of it. For some disciplines, that may well be appropriate. For some levels of student, that may be appropriate. The foundational levels, where we need them to have at least enough understanding of a subject to know the questions to ask and to be able to kind of critically analyze and all the rest of it. But I think what we're going to probably move to in a lot of assessment is problem-based learning, where you demonstrate the capability of addressing a wider problem with a series of leveraging a series of different tools to come to, you know, an overall proposal or solution or whatever. And you're going to have to demonstrate your process. You're going to have to demonstrate the tools that you used. You're going to have to demonstrate perhaps the thinking, the logical thinking that took you from, you know, the client brief to design that plaza, yeah, right through to the detailed, you know, drawings and plan for that plaza, or whether it's a project plan, you know, right, well, coming up with the different structure of the project plan, but then, you know, actually going off and finding the real detail. And at the moment, I think that's still a limitation for a lot of these chatbots. They'll give you overall structure, they'll give you headings, they'll give you a good start on what you should be looking at and what the, you know, the subject area is. But then when you really ask them to nail the fine detail that is very often what you need in the real situation, that's when they start to run into problems, unless you're very, very good at asking the right questions. So I think that's still an area where we can use students, where we can kind of differentiate students is, okay, yeah, you can use ChatGPT to structure up the form of your essay or your thesis structure or whatever it is, but you got to go and you've got to find the detail, and you've got to show us that you can connect the dots in a way that, you know, is unique to you. And what I'm also doing now is asking students to give me personal inputs, you know, but certainly, you know, from work that they've done before or projects that they've been involved in before. What worked, what didn't work? Why did that leader not perform effectively. You know, talk about an old boss of yours that was a good boss or a bad boss, and why, and that kind of stuff. So linking back to personal experience can be useful as well. But I guess in math, that's not going to work, is it? Because, you know, that's a different paradigm, if you like. I think in you know, in my field, we are talking very much about practical application of situational stuff, rather than it being kind of, you know, yes or no, black and white. So I'm not sure. My answer is, I suppose, very conditional on the subject area that you find yourself in. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
I think that's interesting, because if you're steering towards problem-based learning, then the next step, which again is really good for engineering, and particularly I would say your field, Victoria, design, is project-based learning. Because then that becomes more and more difficult to do something that isn't original. But you can use all the tools to help you to get there, but you have to come up with the proof of the artifact. Don't know where that goes with maths, Paul. I don't know how you turn it around.
Well, math is interesting. There was an interesting thing done. I can't remember who it was by, but the outstanding hypothesis in mathematics is called the Riemann-Zeta hypothesis, and it is like the holy grail of mathematics to be able to prove this. And various chatbots have been asked to prove the Riemann-Zeta hypothesis, and it's interesting what they come back with, because it almost means that you could have a different style of assessment, which is to ask a chatbot to do something and to show your skill in the area by showing how rubbish the response is. Because the response in the case of proving the Riemann-Zeta hypothesis, which has been beyond any human being since it was stated in 1852, some very clever human beings have lived since then. Nobody has been able to engage with this. It's a genuinely difficult problem. And yet these chatbots just produce masses of complete rubbish. When if you knew no mathematics, you would look and there's all mathematical symbols all over the place. But most of the time, it's just stupid stuff, changing from one unit to another unit and then back. It's completely circular garbage, which has nothing to do with the problem. So it would be quite interesting, for example, if you took an example like the 737 MAX and sort of said, you know, and this would be more generally for machine learning, but basically sort of say to a machine, design the stabilizer for the 737 MAX, and then come back and actually do the tests and do the work to show how wrong that was. That it was completely false. That the one thing that is evading AI and machine learning at the moment is they can't do physics. They can use the words of physics. They're like trolls on the internet that are constantly proving some great theorem from the past using high school algebra. There's the trappings, there's the symbols and the words, but it's all meaningless.
And they can't do original thinking. I mean, at the moment, the chatbots as written, these large language models are basically just fancy autocorrect. You know, they're just kind of like giving us the next most probable words in a sequence based on all the stuff that they've trolled. But they can't do original thinking. So there are limits to this stuff. Now, they will get better, but it's just simulated kind of intelligence. It's not actual intelligence yet. We've not got to general intelligence yet, and we're still a way away from it, even though this looks so much better than anything we've seen before. And that's a trap that some people are falling into, isn't it? That this is actually intelligent. It's not. It's just better ways of giving us what's already out there in a joined up fashion. But yeah, and it's not going to be as applicable to all disciplines, I suspect. I mean, where the money is at the moment, you know, for OpenAI is giving people the ability to kind of talk to these things and get general information out of it. I mean, Microsoft yesterday announced that they're putting in $1.3 billion into personal assistants. So basically, you're going to have a ChatGPT as a personal assistant in a few months' time, and it will be able to do all the normal, just booking the doctor's appointments for you, and you keeping your life on track and all the rest of it. But are they going to put the same money into your theorems, Paul? Not yet, because that's not where the money is yet. It'll come, but it's not where AI is aimed at the moment. AI is aimed at the mass market at the moment, I think.
It would be great though if there were some parameters given to it, or disciplines, or kind of working with some truths that I know you have to question truths in order to do new research, but it would be really good if there was given some parameters.
Yeah, and I mean, you can. I mean, what's been interesting in the last month is that there's been a number of new tools released where you can build your own bot now. So basically, a subset of the algorithms behind these large language models are now being made available, and you can basically load in your own data and have a closed data set of your own stuff that then you can build up, and then you can start to ask it questions of. So I think we're starting to see moves in that direction. So you might load math stuff into yours, Paul, and Victoria, you'd load of design stuff into yours and whatever, and then the questions that you can ask would probably get better answers because the material in your data set would be very much more specific to the field that you're in. So I think that's what we're going to see. We're already seeing it in medicine. In medicine, they've created a number of large language models now that are being trained on diagnostic records. I was talking to a consultant urologist yesterday, and he was saying, in his career, he's just retired. He probably saw like 5,000 to 10,000 patients or whatever it is. And that was the limit of his data set, apart from his training. But if a large language model could be fed, the diagnoses and the original scans of 1 million patients, it's going to make better decisions because it will have a much bigger data set to draw on than any individual doctor. So what we're going to start seeing are discipline-specific models being created. And, we're in the early days of that already, but that's coming. And it's getting cheaper and cheaper every day. So it will be happening sooner rather than later. It's a moving target, this whole thing, isn't it? When we're talking in September, there will be some stuff that's changed radically by then, I suspect. But that's part of the fun.
Right, Joe, is there a current bias at the moment towards English? These large language models mostly focused on the English-speaking part of the internet. Yeah,
because, well, certainly the stuff that we've got exposure to. I mean, the Chinese are doing a whole lot of work. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there in Chinese, but I mean, I don't read Chinese or, so we don't have access to that. But I mean, if you look at where the AI companies are based, they're almost all in the States. So it's almost all English kind of based. Now, some of them have been trained on other languages, but there's definitely an English bias still. Because that's where they're using that's where the stuff's being developed, and I suppose it's being developed in those languages, isn't it? So yeah. Bias is a whole different thing, isn't it? That we haven't even talked about. Yeah. So any other thoughts, Joe, Owen?
Yeah, I have a thought. Sorry, Owen.
No, go, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, this might be irrelevant, but I'm sure since you've done project management, I did the Prince 2 practitioner, and that's an open book exam. And I'm just wondering, like, I haven't even tried to put something with some of those questions into the AI, but I'm just wondering, would the AI answer that, or would that be a method of assessing now?
No, the AI would get 98% in that exam now.
Right, I understand. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because Prince 2, I mean, the Prince 2 manual is an open, manual. It's out there. Yeah. So all the questions in the Prince 2 practitioner exam are kind of based on the Prince 2 manual, and that's available. So yeah, I mean, there's no question that it's not a good use of, but that's why it's a proctored exam.
Yeah, so that brings us back to like doing the old exam and remembering it in your head, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's funny, actually, I did the Prince 2 training to be a Prince 2 trainer about 3 months ago, and I finished the training and said, I don't want to do this. Yeah, I'm not going to actually be a Prince 2 trainer. Yeah, because it's so rigid. And I mean, basically, you pass the exam by learning the book and by the language. And if you can't learn the language and the book, you and get the 70% or whatever it is, you don't pass the exam. But it's just so far away from real project management. And I said, I don't want to be teaching people this way, and I don't want to go down that route. So I said, thanks very much for the course, but I'm not going to be a trainer in Prince 2 because I just fundamentally disagreed with their approach, if you like. And I mean,
it's very rigid. Yeah,
very, very rigid. And it came out of the UK civil service, which is pretty rigid as well. And it's not the way projects are run these days. So, it's it's not. Yeah, that was an interesting realization for me when I did that.
I just implement bits of it. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. Pick
the tailoring section.
Pick the best bits and go hybrid. That's right.
Yeah.
Super. Right. Well, I think we're pretty much there, aren't we, today? Is there anything else we haven't covered that anybody would like to cover? I was going to make this more interactive and send everybody out into breakout rooms, but I thought we would have more people, and I thought that quite a number of people would come who probably hadn't really had a play yet. So I don't know. I mean, thoughts from the room. This was just a first stab at doing something like this for you. What should we have done differently? If we do September, what should we do differently? What would you like? What would give more value?
Well, for me personally, I mean, this has been very useful as an introductory session.
Yeah.
But for me personally, like Victoria was saying, and various other people are saying, I now need to learn something personally of how to use it.
Yeah.
And so I'm now ahead of school, so that means that I definitely have to do this over the summer, because there is no way I'm going to have the time to do this when the new trimester comes around, and particularly with accreditation next year. So it would be very useful to actually have a session at some point where I actually really genuinely drive this stuff, because of course that's the only way you learn anything, is you practice.
That was the objective, Paul, of running. We knew that we'd get a very small audience today. We had contemplated running this at the end of August or beginning of September, but reckoned that certain colleagues would come back and try to grapple with this in July and August. So even by having the recording, it's like a reference point. And then I had asked Joe if he would come back to, even if nothing else, to do a Q&A session at the very start of September, so that people can, it's like a motivator, they can explore, experiment, they know the obstacles they've run into.
Yeah.
Then we'd have the real conversation, I would imagine. Because I think until you start doing, you don't know.
Yeah.
So the only other thing I'd say, you were asking if there's, so my school has a kind of a link-up school in Beijing, which is a link-up with the BJUT, so it's called BDIC. And it would be very interesting to have some of my BDIC staff in this, because they noted in the exams that just took place, they became aware that 90% of the students were using large language AI in their examination. So it might be that in Ireland there's a low take up, but I think that the Chinese are very technically minded, and the Chinese students are very technically minded, and they're also very pragmatic. They're basically kind of going, the goal is to get a degree. So what is my best path to doing that? And using these things is definitely part of the best path. So they are massively doing it. And there's another school now, mechanical materials in the college, that also has a hookup CDIC, which is another sort of international college, again in China, not in Beijing, in another city. But we're certainly going to see our students using this significantly. So that's why Paul Cuff's work is so important to us, because we just have to figure out how to deal with this from assessment. And I would say that, I mean, so far with regard to plagiarism, we've basically completely failed.
Yeah.
Completely. The student couldn't care less. It's not remotely concerned with plagiarizing. If it gets them a better thing, then that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So we've absolutely completely failed with plagiarism, and now this is much more higher level plagiarism. And much more difficult to detect. In fact, as you say, probably actually impossible to detect.
Yeah.
So that's our real concern going forward, is to make sure that whilst we actually probably strongly encourage our students to use these tools, nonetheless, a degree is not just sort of you spent 4 years here. A degree is supposed to be transformational change in your approach to engineering problem solving, or problem solving, that you have skills and you have tools and you have practice that has made you a more employable person in industry. And so we need to make sure in our assessment that the degree stands for that. So that's our big question. That's why I want to learn how to use this thing myself, so that I can see how can I square that particular circle, which at the moment seems to me an impossible task, of saying, use these tools and yet somehow still be solving the problem yourself. How do I do it?
And which tools to use? I mean, that's another thing. I mean, with the plethora of tools that are out there, there's 2,000 or 3,000 AI tools out there now. I mean, and there's dozens coming out every week. So one of the things we probably need to do is kind of point our students at some of the tools and say, try these ones, start with these. These are ones that we know will give you a reasonable start or a reasonable grounding, or they're not completely, giving rubbish answers out or whatever. But I mean, even that, I mean, how do we as educators stay on top of all this stuff?
But I also want to, apropos of what I was saying before, I want to learn these things enough so that I can actually just, as you said there with regard to rubbish answers, that, I mean, the thing will basically be that the tool will sort of kind of lay out some kind of structure.
Yeah.
But then the real contribution of the student will be to basically go, well, that assertion is simply false. And that table of numbers is just made up, and replace it with things that are actually correct. And I have to go at 10 to 12. So if you don't mind, thank you very much, Joe and Mairead. This has been really, really useful. Thank you very much indeed. And
Thank
look forward
you.
to seeing you again, Joe.
Yeah, we'll see you in September. Yeah, and have
okay,
a fun
brilliant. Thanks
summer.
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
But I mean, what Paul was saying there makes a really interesting class with with students is use AI to generate some stuff and then get the students in groups or whatever to go and critically analyze it. And
yeah, I have to say, if I could add to that point, though, I have to say that for students who are learning, information, they're building on facts,
yes,
putting new information together, trying to conceptualize, it's going to be really difficult for a lot of students. I would put myself in that category. If I hear lots of false information mixed in and I'm not sure which is false and which is not, not false, because you don't know what to retain. You might hear false information, retain it for a week, and then find out, oh, I should have critiqued that. And then, you get a D for not critiquing it, but you can't remember what was right, because you were dwelling with the false information for a week. So we could easily let our students get lost in falsities, particularly any, like, I don't know, dyslexic students or people like that who maybe would rather, in a more systematic way, build up skills and knowledge.
Yeah, and but that's a really tricky point that we all face all the time, isn't it? How do we give students good sources? And I mean, I suppose that's why we've got academic sources and, the academic databases, because they're peer reviewed and they're supposed to be good. Now, in 5 years' time, when 90% of all academic papers have been written either by AI or severely influenced by AI, are the academic sources going to be solid as well? Because that is a growing issue.
That's right. We could have feedback loops.
We're going to have feedback very soon.
Yeah, that could happen very quickly, where everything just goes, where you just can't untangle the facts.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot more questions than answers, definitely.
And I think students are going to have to learn how to refine the questions, because that's going to be an art.
This whole prompt engineering kind of area is going to be a thing. Yeah, definitely.
But that's back to what I was saying again about first year, because I think that fear that Victoria has just come up with, I think in first year it may be a different way for assessment, in terms of, if nothing else, getting students to try the different tools and actually compare and contrast to you giving them factual information. And if they can, if like, that could be a challenge and a type of assessment in itself. So they start to see something factual, and then where there's some facts in some of the AI generated stuff and where there is pure rubbish. And it's a learning curve to realize that the AI isn't an answer to everything, or isn't always to be trusted. So, these could be things to be built into or factored into first year.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've done that. I did a pre-recorded session with ChatGPT where I asked it some questions and I recorded the answers, and then I extracted those answers and I kind of gave them out to the students as a document, a PDF. Yeah. And then we worked through the PDF. Yeah. And I highlighted what was correct and what wasn't correct. And they got very quickly that they couldn't trust.
Here we go. This is exactly, yeah.
But it was mediated, you see. So I'd gone through it.
Yeah.
And I highlighted all the stuff that was incorrect for them.
Yeah.
Said, this is the amount of stuff in this that looks really credible that isn't right. Okay. Now, and then you can kind of build on that and say, right, now you go and try something. But every time you see an assertion, okay, go and substantiate that assertion with a reference or with something from somewhere else other than the source that it's used. Yeah. And very quickly then they kind of started to get the idea, and that forces them into then the databases, and that forces them into the research mind thinking and all the rest of it. It's a great way to engage.
Yeah. That's what I actually think should happen in first year, and that also will help them to refine the questions.
Yes.
Because they're seeing that they're really the master. These are ugly tools, you know. So I think, you know, people that are asking questions about assessment in first year, these may be very relevant forms of assessment as opposed to what was traditionally assessed, you know.
And I think that's what we need to look at for next term and for next year, is everybody needs to look at their current assessments and say, are these fit for purpose anymore? Because they're probably not. That's a good place to stop, isn't it?
Okay, thanks a million.
Thank you so much, Joe. That's really great, and I think a lot of people will really benefit and will value the recording.
Super. Good to be with you, and thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks Victoria. Super.